What if the most iconic station wagon in movie history was never supposed to exist? What if Clark Griswold's hideous Family Truckster was built on lies, covered in secrets, and hid a truth that would shock National Lampoon fans? This metallic pea-green nightmare isn't just a joke car. It's a Frankenstein monster that fooled millions, cost a fortune, and nearly killed the film before anyone saw it. Number 20. The Truckster never actually existed as a real model.
I can get you the wagon. There's no problem there. The problem is it might take 6 weeks. Now, I owe it to myself to tell you, Mr. Griswold, that if you're thinking to take...
Let's start with the most shocking truth about the Family Truckster. It was never a real car you could buy from any dealership. Ford never manufactured anything called the Wagon Queen Family Truckster. The entire vehicle was a custom fabrication created specifically for the movie by legendary car customizer George Barris. Here's where it gets interesting. Barris took a 1980 Ford LTD Country Squire station wagon and transformed it into the automotive abomination you see on screen. But Ford wasn't happy about it. The studio had to get special permission to modify the vehicle because they were contractually obligated not to make Ford look bad. That's why the film shows Eugene Levy's character explaining the car is a special metallic pea-green model. It wasn't product placement, it was legal protection. Barris added 8 headlights, custom grills, bizarre side trim, and that ridiculous luggage rack to make it look like the worst possible family car. The transformation took 6 weeks and cost over $15,000. That's almost $50,000 in today's money for a car that was designed to be laughed at. Number 19. Multiple trucksters were built and only one survives.
Please let me do the driving.
I honestly don't think you're gonna find the Grand Canyon for an hour.
Oh, shut up, Audrey. You don't think Dad knows where he's going?
Thank you, Russ.
You'd think the production only needed one hideously modified station wagon. Wrong. George Barris actually built 4 different Family Trucksters for National Lampoon's Vacation. Each vehicle served a specific purpose during filming. One was the hero car used for close-ups and dialogue scenes where the actors interacted. There was a camera car hollowed out so the film crew could shoot interior scenes while the vehicle appeared to be driving. The 4th was essentially a backup in case any of the others broke down during production. Here's the tragic part. 3 of the 4 original Trucksters were destroyed, scrapped, or lost after filming wrapped. For decades, nobody knew where any of them went. Then in 2013, a car collector discovered one of the original hero cars rotting in a private collection. It was restored and now appears at car shows, but the other 3 are gone forever. That means 75% of automotive movie history vanished. Number 18. The car was so unreliable it broke down 17 times. The Family Truckster looked like a disaster, but behind the scenes, it actually was a disaster. The heavily modified Ford station wagon broke down 17 separate times during the 52 days of principal photography. The custom front grille that Barris installed blocked so much airflow that the engine constantly overheated. Production had to halt multiple times while mechanics worked frantically to cool down the motor. But the engine wasn't the only problem. The 8 headlights were wired incorrectly and kept short-circuiting, sometimes catching fire during night shoots. The oversized luggage rack created so much wind resistance that the transmission struggled to handle highway speeds. Harold Ramis, the director, later admitted in interviews that they lost almost a week of filming because the Truckster kept dying. The studio considered replacing it with a stock station wagon and adding the weird features in post-production using special effects, but that would have cost even more money. So they stuck with the unreliable beast. Mechanics were on standby at every location. The phrase around set became, "Is the Truckster working today?" More often than not, the answer was no. Number 17. Chevy Chase actually hated driving the Truckster.
Tell us about your itinerary over there. What were some of your stops?
Well, our first stop was at a...
Chevy Chase spent weeks behind the wheel of the Family Truckster, but he absolutely despised every minute of it. The custom modifications made the car nearly impossible to drive safely. The 8 headlights created a massive blind spot that obscured his forward vision, especially during night scenes. Chase complained constantly to Harold Ramis that he couldn't see where he was going. The oversized front grille extended so far forward that judging distances became a nightmare. Chase hit curbs, scratched other vehicles, and nearly crashed into the camera truck twice. But here's the worst part. The interior modifications removed most of the original safety features. The seatbelts were decorative props that didn't actually function properly. The steering was so loose from all the custom work that the car pulled constantly to the left. Chase later told Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show that driving the Truckster was more terrifying than any physical comedy stunt he'd ever performed. The insurance company eventually required a professional stunt driver for any scene exceeding 35 miles per hour. Number 16. The metallic pea green paint required 12 coats. That hideous metallic pea green color wasn't something George Barris found in a standard automotive paint catalog. It was custom mixed specifically to look as unappealing as possible. The color took 3 weeks to develop because Barris wanted something that looked simultaneously new and disgusting. He tested 17 different shades before settling on the final nauseating hue. But achieving that perfect awful color required 12 separate coats of paint. The base coat was actually a mustard yellow. Then came layers of green with metallic flakes mixed in specific proportions. Each coat had to dry for 24 hours before the next application. The total paint job cost $4,000, which was more than some people paid for entire used cars in 1983. The studio's art director initially rejected the color as too subtle. He wanted something that would make audiences physically uncomfortable. Barris added extra metallic flakes to the final coats, creating that shimmer that makes your eyes hurt when sunlight hits it. Number 15. The wood paneling was actually vinyl that kept peeling off.
The Griswolds.
Every classic station wagon had that fake wood paneling on the sides, and the Truckster was no exception. But here's what nobody tells you. The wood paneling wasn't real wood or even the factory vinyl that came on actual Ford Country Squires. George Barris used cheap aftermarket vinyl strips because the custom body modifications made the original paneling impossible to install. This created a huge problem. The vinyl adhesive couldn't handle the summer heat during location shooting. The paneling started peeling off during the very first week of filming in Arizona, where temperatures exceeded 100 degrees. Production assistants had to reapply the strips every single day using industrial-strength contact cement. By the end of shooting, the paneling had been replaced 4 complete times. You can actually spot continuity errors in the film where the wood grain pattern changes between scenes. Harold Ramis considered removing the paneling entirely, but test audiences said the car didn't look authentic without it, so the crew kept fighting that peeling vinyl nightmare for 2 months straight. Number 14. The luggage rack scene required 37 takes and destroyed real luggage. That iconic moment where Clark ties Aunt Edna to the roof inside a lawn chair became one of the most memorable scenes in comedy history. But filming it was an absolute nightmare that required 37 separate takes over 3 days. The problem wasn't the acting. It was the physics of securing a lawn chair, luggage, and a dummy representing Aunt Edna to that oversized custom luggage rack without everything sliding off at highway speeds. The production used real vintage suitcases from the 1960s and 70s, and they destroyed 43 pieces of actual luggage during testing. Grips tried bungee cords, ratchet straps, and rope before finally developing a custom rigging system that could hold everything in place. Here's the crazy part. The insurance company refused to let them use a real actor on the roof while the car was moving, so they built 3 different dummies of actress Imogene Coca at a cost of $8,000 each. The first dummy flew off during take 12 and landed in a ditch. The second dummy's arm ripped off during take 24. Only the third dummy survived the entire sequence. Harold Ramis later said that scene alone consumed 11% of their total budget. Number 13. Ford threatened legal action over the car's appearance.
Right, I don't think this is the car. This is the new Wagon Queen Family Truckster. This is a damn fine automobile, if you want my...
Ford Motor Company was not amused when they saw what George Barris had done to their Country Squire station wagon. 3 weeks before the film's release, Ford's legal department sent Warner Brothers a cease and desist letter threatening a lawsuit unless significant changes were made. Ford argued that the hideous modifications made their brand look ridiculous and violated their licensing agreement. The studio had permission to use Ford vehicles, but the contract stipulated that the cars couldn't be portrayed in an excessively negative manner. Warner Brothers lawyers argued that the Truckster was clearly a parody and fell under fair use protection. The legal battle went back and forth for 6 weeks. Ford wanted the production to digitally remove all Ford logos and badging from every frame, which would have cost hundreds of thousands in 1983 dollars. The compromise came down to one sentence of dialogue. Eugene Levy's character had to explicitly state that the Truckster was not a standard Ford model, but rather a special Wagon Queen family Truckster. That single line of dialogue released Ford from liability. The studio also agreed to include a disclaimer in the credits stating that the vehicle was a custom creation. Ford dropped the lawsuit 2 days before the premiere. Number 12. The interior upholstery was sewn from actual 1970s couch fabric.
I haven't seen a car for an hour.
Oh, shut up, Audrey. You don't think Dad knows where he's going?
Thank you, Russ.
George Barris didn't stop with the exterior modifications. He completely gutted and redesigned the Truckster's interior to match the car's hideous aesthetic. The seats weren't reupholstered with automotive fabric. Barris personally visited 7 different thrift stores in Los Angeles and purchased 9 ugly couches from the 1970s. He then had his upholstery team strip the fabric and sew it into custom seat covers for the Truckster. The pattern was a nauseating combination of burnt orange, harvest gold, and brown stripes that looked like something from a condemned mobile home. But here's the brilliant part. That cheap couch fabric created an unexpected problem during filming. The material wasn't treated with fire retardant like proper automotive upholstery, which meant it was a legitimate fire hazard under the hot filming lights. The production had to spray every square inch with flame-resistant chemicals before insurance would allow actors inside. The fabric also absorbed sweat and odors, making the interior smell progressively worse throughout the 2-month shoot. Chevy Chase complained that the car smelled like old cigarettes and mothballs. By the final week of filming, the smell was so bad that actors had to air out the Truckster for 30 minutes before each take. Number 11. The custom dashboard gauges were non-functional props that caused filming delays.
This is like a great date car. Because if you showed up to pick up a girl in this...
George Barris installed a completely custom dashboard in the Family Truckster to make it look as bizarre as the exterior. He added extra gauges, switches, and indicator lights that served absolutely no purpose. The speedometer was replaced with an oversized unit that went up to 160 miles per hour, even though the overloaded Truckster could barely reach 80. He installed fake temperature gauges, oil pressure monitors, and warning lights that blinked randomly. Here's where the problem started. None of these custom gauges actually connected to anything mechanical. They were purely decorative props powered by separate batteries. During filming, the batteries would die without warning, causing all the dashboard lights to go dark mid-take. The production had to halt 17 times just to replace dead batteries and fake gauges. But the worst issue involved the turn signals. Barris relocated them to bizarre positions on the custom dashboard, but forgot to wire them to the actual turn signal mechanism. Chevy Chase would flip the signal switch and nothing would happen on the exterior lights. This created dangerous situations during road filming when other drivers couldn't tell which direction the Truckster was turning. The production eventually hired a crew member to ride in a follow vehicle and manually signal turns using hand gestures through the window. Number 10. The Truckster weighed 900 pounds more than a stock station wagon.
It's amazing. I cannot get... Look, kids.
The standard 1980 Ford Country Squire weighed approximately 4,300 pounds. After George Barris finished his modifications, the Family Truckster tipped the scales at 5,200 pounds. Those 900 extra pounds came from the absurd amount of additional metal, chrome, lights, and custom components welded onto the vehicle. The 8 headlights alone added 60 pounds of glass and housing. The massive front grille weighed 140 pounds compared to the stock grille's 35 pounds. The custom luggage rack was industrial-strength steel that added another 85 pounds. Here's the engineering nightmare this created. The Ford Country Squire's suspension and brakes were designed for a 4,000-pound vehicle. Adding 900 pounds meant the suspension was constantly compressed to its limit, giving the Truckster a distinctive saggy appearance that actually wasn't intentional. The brakes became dangerously inadequate. Stopping distances increased by 40%, which terrified both the actors and the stunt coordinators. The production had to upgrade the brake system twice during filming after several near accidents. The extra weight also destroyed fuel economy. The Truckster got 6 miles per gallon on the highway, compared to the stock wagon's 15 miles per gallon. The production spent over $8,000 just on gasoline during the 2-month shoot. Number 9. Beverly D'Angelo refused to film inside the car for 3 days because of a wasp nest.
See all this plight? This'll just make us appreciate what we have.
During the 3rd week of location shooting in Arizona, Beverly D'Angelo noticed wasps flying around inside the truckster between takes. She mentioned it to the crew, but everyone assumed they were just desert insects attracted to the film equipment. Big mistake. The next morning, a crew member opened the rear cargo area and discovered a fully established wasp nest the size of a football built into the custom interior panels. Apparently, the cheap couch fabric and the gaps in Barris's custom construction created the perfect nesting environment. Beverly D'Angelo absolutely refused to continue filming until the nest was professionally removed. Production shut down for 3 days while exterminators dealt with the problem. But here's the shocking part. When they removed the panels, they found 2 additional nests in different locations. The wasps had been living inside the truckster for at least 10 days before anyone noticed. The extermination cost $4,000 and required completely disassembling the rear interior. Harold Ramis later admitted they should have condemned the entire car and used a backup vehicle, but they'd already destroyed too much footage to start over. Beverly D'Angelo eventually returned to filming, but she insisted on a full vehicle inspection before every single take for the remainder of production. Number 8. The custom horn played La Cucaracha and required special permission. George Barris installed a custom musical horn that played La Cucaracha whenever Clark pressed the center of the steering wheel. This wasn't just a funny detail, it required special licensing from the music publisher because the melody was copyrighted. Warner Brothers had to pay $2,000 for the rights to use those specific notes in the film. But the horn created unexpected problems during location shooting. Other drivers on public roads would hear La Cucaracha blaring and become confused or angry, causing traffic disruptions. Police stopped production twice because nearby residents complained about the repetitive musical horn. The mechanism also malfunctioned constantly, playing at random times when nobody touched the steering wheel. During one night scene, the horn spontaneously played for 45 seconds straight while Chevy Chase was delivering dialogue. They had to disconnect the horn entirely for interior scenes and add the sound effect in post-production instead. Number 7. The custom horn was stolen twice and replaced with a bicycle horn. George Barris installed a custom triple-tone air horn system on the Family Truckster that cost $1,200. It was deliberately obnoxious, playing 3 discordant notes that sounded like a dying elephant, perfect for the car's personality. But during the 2nd week of filming in Los Angeles, someone broke into the production lot and stole the entire horn assembly right off the vehicle. The thieves knew exactly what they were doing because they removed it without damaging any surrounding components. Production had to halt for 2 days while Barris fabricated a replacement. 3 weeks later, it happened again. The second custom horn was stolen from a motel parking lot in Arizona during overnight storage. At this point, the production was hemorrhaging money and couldn't afford a 3rd custom installation. The solution was both ridiculous and perfect. The prop department bought a $15 bicycle horn from a toy store and mounted it inside the engine compartment connected to the steering wheel button. For the remaining 6 weeks of filming, that pathetic little bicycle horn became the truckster's actual horn. If you listen carefully to the final cut, you can hear the difference between early scenes with the air horn and later scenes with the comical bicycle horn. Harold Ramis thought the bicycle horn was even funnier and kept it in the film. Number 6. The windshield cracked 11 times due to stress from custom body modifications. The massive structural changes George Barris made to the truckster's body created catastrophic stress points throughout the vehicle's frame. The worst problem manifested in the windshield, which cracked 11 separate times during the 52 days of principal photography. When Barris welded on the heavy custom front grille and 8 headlight assembly, he fundamentally altered how the vehicle's frame distributed weight and absorbed road vibration. The front end became so rigid that every bump and pothole sent shockwaves directly into the windshield glass. The first crack appeared on day 4 of shooting. By week 3, the production was replacing windshields every 4 to 5 days. Each replacement cost $350, plus another day of lost filming time while installation crews worked frantically. The prop department started keeping 3 spare windshields on location at all times. Here's the engineering disaster nobody anticipated. Modern windshields are designed to flex slightly, which prevents cracking under normal stress. But the Truckster's modified frame eliminated that flex, turning the windshield into a rigid piece of glass that couldn't handle any road stress. A structural engineer finally diagnosed the problem during week 7, but by then, fixing it would have required completely rebuilding the front end. They just kept replacing windshields and hoped the car would survive until filming wrapped. Number 5. Anthony Michael Hall got food poisoning from eating lunch inside the hot car.
Be okay, Dad?
Oh, sure. You know, I haven't had much of a chance to talk to you man to man.
Filming inside the Family Truckster during summer was absolutely brutal. The custom modifications and cheap upholstery fabric turned the interior into a mobile oven that regularly reached 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The production provided portable air conditioning units between takes, but they couldn't run while cameras were rolling because of the noise. During week 5 of shooting in the Arizona desert, 13-year-old Anthony Michael Hall made a critical mistake. Instead of eating lunch in the catering tent with the rest of the cast, he stayed inside the Truckster eating a turkey sandwich while rehearsing his lines. The combination of intense heat, spoiling mayonnaise, and the car's existing bacterial ecosystem from weeks of accumulated sweat created a perfect storm. Hall became violently ill 6 hours later and couldn't work for 3 days. Production had to reschedule an entire week of scenes featuring Rusty Griswold. The studio flew in a private doctor who confirmed food poisoning. Harold Ramis immediately implemented a strict rule prohibiting anyone from eating inside the vehicle. The incident cost the production approximately $35,000 in lost time and medical expenses. Beverly D'Angelo later joked that the Truckster had achieved sentience and was actively trying to kill the cast members one by one. Number 4. Anthony Michael Hall was hospitalized after inhaling exhaust fumes inside the car.
Coming for to carry me home, swing low, chariot.
Anthony Michael Hall played Rusty Griswold and spent countless hours in the Truckster's back seat during filming. But George Barris's custom modifications created a deadly problem nobody anticipated. The custom floor panels didn't seal properly, allowing exhaust fumes to leak directly into the passenger compartment. During a long driving sequence filmed on a closed highway, Hall started feeling dizzy and nauseous. He mentioned it to Beverly D'Angelo, who noticed he looked pale and disoriented. Production called a medic, who immediately recognized carbon monoxide poisoning symptoms. Hall was rushed to the hospital, where he spent 6 hours under observation receiving oxygen treatment. Doctors confirmed dangerous levels of carbon monoxide in his bloodstream. He could have died if the scene had lasted another 20 minutes. The incident triggered a full safety investigation. Inspectors discovered that Barris's custom exhaust system was routed incorrectly, and the floor panel gaps were 2 inches wide in some places. The production had to completely rebuild the exhaust system and seal every floor panel gap with industrial sealant. Child Protective Services investigated and nearly shut down production entirely. The studio paid a $50,000 fine for endangering a minor. All subsequent filming required carbon monoxide detectors inside the vehicle. Number 3. Warner Brothers executives tried canceling the film because the car cost too much. Six weeks into production, Warner Brothers executives called an emergency meeting with Harold Ramis and the producers. The Family Truckster had become a financial disaster. The original budget allocated $8,000 for the car. The actual costs had reached $93,000 and were still climbing. That's over $300,000 in today's money for a single vehicle. Executives argued the Truckster wasn't essential to the story and demanded they replace it with a regular station wagon. Harold Ramis refused, insisting the hideous car was the visual centerpiece of the entire film. The studio threatened to halt production and fire Ramis unless he could justify the expense. Ramis showed them test footage of audience reactions to the Truckster. People laughed so hard they missed dialogue. The car itself was getting bigger laughs than many of the scripted jokes. The executives reluctantly agreed to continue, but they slashed the budget for other departments to compensate. The costume budget was cut by 40%. Several planned scenes were eliminated entirely. The studio also demanded that Harold Ramis personally guarantee the car would become iconic enough to justify the expense. If the Truckster flopped, Ramis would forfeit his back-end profit participation. Number 2. The Truckster's engine was secretly replaced with a high-performance racing motor. Here's a secret that George Barris never publicly admitted until 2008. The Family Truckster wasn't running the stock Ford Country Squire engine. The original motor couldn't handle the vehicle's massive weight gain and constant filming demands. After the engine failed completely during week 4 of production, Barris made an unauthorized decision that could have gotten him fired. He swapped out the stock 255 cubic inch V8 with a high-performance 460 cubic inch racing engine from a Ford Thunderbird. This motor produced almost double the horsepower and cost $18,000. Barris didn't tell the studio because he knew they'd never approve the expense. He buried the cost in other invoices and hoped nobody would notice. The swap took 4 days, while the crew filmed scenes that didn't require the car. When Harold Ramis discovered the deception 3 weeks later, he was furious, but couldn't undo it without shutting down production again. Here's the ironic twist. That racing engine made the Truckster significantly faster and more reliable than a stock wagon. All those highway scenes where the car appears sluggish, that was Chevy Chase deliberately driving slowly for comic effect. The Truckster could actually exceed 110 miles per hour. Number 1. The surviving Truckster sold at auction for $325,000 in 2022.
From National Lampoon's Vacation, the movie that debuted 37 summers ago. Great details here. We'll point out that the
Remember how only one of the 4 original Trucksters survived? That car became one of the most valuable movie vehicles in history. In December 2022, the restored hero car sold at a Barrett-Jackson auction for $325,000. The winning bidder was an anonymous collector who outbid 17 other people in a fierce bidding war that lasted 42 minutes. But here's the truly insane part. When that car was discovered rotting in a private collection back in 2013, it was worth maybe $15,000 as scrap. The 9-year restoration cost over $180,000. Every custom piece had to be recreated from original photos because most of Barris's documentation was lost. The restorers tracked down the original upholsterer who still had fabric samples from those 1970s couches. They found vintage chrome suppliers who could match Barris's specifications. They even located the original paint formula. The metallic pea green required 4 attempts to match perfectly. When you add the restoration cost to the auction price, someone invested over $500,000 in a car that was literally built to be ugly. That's the power of National Lampoon's Vacation. The Truckster went from a $15,000 joke to a $500,000 cultural icon. And there you have it. 20 weird facts about Clark Griswold's Family Truckster that proved this hideous station wagon was way more than just a punchline. From the fires and the thefts to the lawsuits and the near-deaths, the Truckster survived everything Hollywood could throw at it. George Barris created an automotive monster that cost a fortune, nearly killed the production, and became one of the most recognizable vehicles in movie history. That metallic pea green nightmare proved that sometimes the ugliest things become the most beautiful. Did you know any of these facts? Drop a comment below telling us which one shocked you the most. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into automotive movie history, smash that like button and subscribe for more weird facts about iconic vehicles. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the journey is more important than the destination, especially when you're driving a Wagon Queen family truckster.